Ted Cruz has apologized for spreading the rumor that Ben Carson's dropping. I actually apologized to Dr. Carson. Ted Cruz apologized for his campaign statements made on the day of the Iowa caucus, implying that Carson was dropping out of the race. Last night, when our political team saw the CNN post saying Dr. Carson was not carrying on to New Hampshire and South Carolina, our campaign updated to grassroots leaders just as we would with any breaking news story. It's fair game. What the team should have done is send around the follow-up statement from the Carson campaign clarifying that he was indeed staying in the race when that came out. That was a mistake from our end, and for that I apologize to Dr. Carson. This is an even more direct apology than what I reported to you yesterday, but it doesn't look like it's enough to satisfy Dr. Carson. During an appearance on the Fox Business Network's After the Bell, Dr. Carson responded to Cruz's apology. He said, as Christians, of course, we accept people's apologies. We also have to ask ourselves, is this acceptable to us, the American people? Or should there be some accountability, Cruz added. There should be some consequences for things. You don't just say, oh, okay, sorry, okay, let's move on. The damage was done to me. It wasn't done to them. So, what's he saying? That Cruz ought to fire some people? Dr. Carson wants heads to roll. I guess my idea didn't get any traction. Cruz should offer Dr. Carson a couple delegates. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I thought that would have been a great compromise here. Whoever does that before? Just give a couple delegates. Sorry, Dr. Carson, I did. Of course, then I can see the problem. If you offer a couple delegates and Dr. Carson, no, I want all 5. Then you've got a negotiation. Yeah, I understand that. But look at the magnanimity of offering a couple of delegates as a peace offering. It's not like offering $24 for Manhattan, but nevertheless, it's a deal. I know that's why it probably isn't going to happen. He's going to need those delegates toward the end. You never know. And then there's this from Breitbart. Republican presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson alleged there is a culture within Cruz's campaign that led some of his supporters to falsely claim that Carson had dropped out during the Iowa caucus on Tuesday's O'Reilly factor. By the way, I was mentioned on the O'Reilly factor last night, too, and we have that coming up. Well, I had a caller yesterday. There's a lot of callers here calling about Fox News lately. We had one yesterday, and I explained to them, like the callers, they're not conservative anymore. They're not conservative like I remember them. Used to be able to pin, and all they do is just criticize conservatives. And I sought to explain that, and why that happens. And the O'Reilly factor aired that and, of course, promptly disagreed and brought in guests who disagreed and then unknowingly made my point. So we will share that with you as the program unfolds. But Carson was on the O'Reilly factor, said he'd talked to Cruz. He says that he didn't know anything about what the campaign did, meaning that's what Cruz told Carson. And Carson says, I have to accept at his word that he didn't know, because he said if he'd known, he would have not agreed to do such a thing, meaning tweet out that Carson was leaving the campaign. Now, Carson later said a culture exists within the Cruz campaign that would allow people to take advantage of a situation like this in a very dishonest way. He says this is the kind of stuff we see with the Obama administration, the IRS scandal, no responsibility. Well, let's see what, in fact, the Cruz campaign will do about those people who inappropriately disseminated this information, knowing that the caucus was not over. Here comes Sarah Palin, endorser of Donald Trump, on Facebook. Dirty politics. Witnessing firsthand, it's always heartbreaking, never surprising. She writes, thank heavens Donald Trump opened so many eyes to the lies, corruption, and total lack of accountability that comes so naturally to the permanent political class. And Senator Ted Cruz was spot on when he once noted that millions of Americans are asking for accountability and truth, which is why it's so curious, Sarah Palin writes, and why it saddens us. This lack of accountability with the lies of Cruz's own campaign. Cruz's campaign chairman, U.S. Representative Steve King, is lying, and good for Ben Carson for calling this out. King, who's previously asked for and received my endorsement, says Palin, time and resources to support his own election, says Palin, is still lying about my altruistic support for Mr. Trump, and he's refused to provide any evidence to the contrary. And this U.S. congressman actually lied to his own constituents on behalf of Cruz regarding a good man, Dr. Carson. He told voters that Carson was dropping out of the presidential race immediately before the Iowa caucus, causing a relative uproar inside the process. So the word would spread, and he could rack up more votes for his candidates. Cruz, that's a dirty trick. Dr. Carson deserved better. The voters deserve better. Where's the accountability for these political actions? Very sad. Typical Washington tactics. This is why the status quo's got to go. That's Sarah Palin chiming in, dumping on Cruz and Steve King and the campaign for the dire mistreatment of Dr. Carson. And over here, was Marco Rubio guilty in the Ben Carson dropout rumor? I'll tell you what this says after this. Just got an email here during the break. Dear Rush, I'm missing something here. In this outrage, I'm missing something in this outrage directed at Cruz. Trump, Palin, Carson, all sound whiny to me. What in the world do they think they're doing? What business are they in here? Folks, maybe that describes some of you. The aspect of this. What it means, look, Cruz is the front runner. And this is apparently the only way they can go after it. I guess they don't think they can go after him on issues. I guess they don't see any other way to go. You know they're going to go after the front runner. I mean, it's the name of the game here. Now, it does matter, I think, what you go after the front runner on. You do run the risk of sounding, I don't know, whiny. I don't know what it is, but you got to realize what business you're in here. But if there were a way to solidly attack Cruz on issues or substance, I think they would do that too. And so far, it's just about whatever his campaign did with Dr. Carson. Now, ran across a website today, the first time. It's named Politic, Politistic. And the writer here is Jennifer Burke. The headline, was Marco Rubio guilty in the Ben Carson dropout rumor? It begins this way. Senator Cruz has been the subject of brutal attacks all day by the Carson campaign. Prior to the beginning of the Iowa caucus, CNN reporter Chris Moody tweeted that Dr. Carson was leaving the campaign trail to return to Florida for some R&R. He then said that Carson would be in Washington for the National Prayer Breakfast, the event that put him on the map back in 2013. The Cruz campaign is accused of intentionally using dirty tricks against Carson during the Iowa caucus. Dr. Carson finished the night just over 9% of the vote. Cruz won it with 27.6%. Carson accuses Cruz of intentionally trying to undermine his campaign due to the actions of a grassroots leader involved with his campaign. But the one thing not being mentioned is the CNN report, which stemmed from an unclear statement sent out by the Carson campaign. This woman, Jennifer Burke, is actually saying, if you want to get to the bottom of this, what started it all? The Cruz camp didn't start it. There was a tweet out there. And her area of focus is the Carson campaign, backed up by CNN. Here's the Chris Moody tweet. This is exactly what CNN tweeted out at 5:43 p.m. on February 1st. This is before the caucus even started. Chris Moody, CNN, tweets, Carson won't go to New Hampshire or South Carolina, but instead will head home to Florida for some R&R. He'll be in D.C. Thursday for the National Prayer Breakfast. The doctor's campaign later clarified that Dr. Carson was not dropping out of the race, but merely returning to Florida to get a change of clothes. Dana Perino of Fox News said earlier on Tuesday such a decision by presidential candidate at this stage of the game is unheard of. Still, Cruz handled the accusation with class, issuing an apology. That entire apology is being framed as an admission of wrongdoing by Cruz himself. But what has not been said much throughout the day is that Florida Senator Marco Rubio's campaign worked actively to spread the message that Carson was leaving the race. These actions were reported by on Twitter by Conrad Close, who, according to his Twitter profile, is the managing editor of Outset magazine. Another interesting little tidbit about Conrad Close that he shouts from the rooftops with his Twitter profile is that he is Team Rubio, with the statement below his picture, I'm voting for Marco Rubio. His tweet at 6:29 p.m. on February 1st, before the caucus had begun, Rubio campaign pushing the narrative hard that Carson is dropping out, obviously looking to pick up votes for Carson. That's a tweet from a guy named Conrad Close, who identifies a young guy. He identifies himself as a Rubio supporter and is the managing editor of something called Outset magazine, conservative journalist and communications guy fighting to make a difference for God and country is how he describes himself in his Twitter profile. Managing editor Outset, occasionally tries to save the world, lives in Georgia, and he tweeted out at 6:30, Rubio campaign pushing the narrative hard that Carson is dropping out, obviously looking to pick up votes from Carson. And that's gone. They pulled that down, but their screenshot was grabbed of it in time. And there's more. So the plot thickens here, ladies and gentlemen, but it's still politics. It's not romper room, but that's, we live in a country where many millennials think it is romper room, folks. That's a problem with our education system. And another story. We'll be back. No. I get it. I mean, Cruz wins Iowa by stressing his ethics and his honesty and religion, so I can understand him going after others. But you gotta just sit tight, folks. We not stopping, rolling right on when we get back.